The obsidian tribunal shimmered, a vast, suspended disk of polished black stone floating in the gravity-neutral heart of the citadel. Below, the swirling nebulae of the galactic core painted the silent chamber in hues of violet and crimson, their light catching the crystalline carapaces and flowing methane silk robes of the assembled delegates. Here, the consolidated systems, a union of the galaxy's elder races, convened not in celebration, but in hushed, suffocating fear. At the center of their dread was a single, obstinate enigma: humanity. And more specifically, the ghost that haunted the hyperlanes, the vessel spoken of only in classified communiques and terrified whispers, the Vindicator. The name itself was a human absurdity, a word that translated poorly into the consortium's myriad languages, yet its implication was universally understood. It promised retribution, a concept the elder races, in their long and stagnant peace, had almost forgot. The Lumaran High Delegate, a being of pure, coherent light encased in a sculpted crystalline form, pulsed with anxious energy. Its voice, a cascade of harmonious chimes, echoed in the chamber, each note resonating with the gravity of their predicament. The reports are consistent across all sensor platforms. The vessel, this Vindicator, does not move like any known ship. It does not radiate energy signatures we can comprehend. It simply arrives. It appears in systems without a detectable chronoton wake, without a ripple in subspace. It observes, and then it is gone. We have sent hails. We have sent diplomatic overtures. We have even sent veiled threats, encoded in the universal language of stellar physics. There has been no reply, only silence. A silence that is louder than any declaration of war. Across the tribunal, the Jethar Prime, a hulking being whose form was a monument of granite-like flesh and symbiotic crystal growths, shifted its immense weight. Its voice was the grinding of tectonic plates, a deep, resonant rumble that shook the very air. Silence is a weapon. The humans have been in the galactic community for a mere fraction of our recorded history. They are primitives, barely a Type 1 civilization by our metrics. Their worlds are loud, chaotic, and emotionally incontinent. Yet they build a ship that can outwit the sensors of races that have navigated the void since before that species could even spark fire. It is illogical. It suggests a technological leap that is impossible. It suggests they have found something, or someone has given them something. A third voice, slick and sibilant, emerged from the shadowed alcove where the secretive Cathar delegates resided. They were creatures of shadow and rumor, their physical forms rarely seen, their influence felt as a cold pressure in the corridors of power. Or perhaps, Jethar Prime, their primitivism is their greatest deception. We have analyzed their history, a tapestry of self-inflicted violence and bewildering altruism. They wage war on a scale that would shatter lesser species, only to then build monuments to the peace that follows. They are a paradox. Their technology mirrors this. They wield crude, brutal fission weapons on their own planets, yet they have mastered gravitational complexities that even the Lumaran find challenging. This Vindicator is not a gift. It is a product of their chaotic, unpredictable nature. We have underestimated them from our first encounter. The debate circled, a vortex of fear and pride. The elder races, so accustomed to their dominance, their predictable and orderly existence, could not fathom humanity. Humans were a disruptive element, a variable in an equation that had been stable for eons. They had expanded from their single star system with a speed that was alarming, not through conquest, as was the ancient way, but through a baffling process of what they called exploration and curiosity. They did not claim territory in the traditional sense. They simply arrived, studied, and moved on, leaving behind only a lingering sense of unease. Their ships were strange. They were not aesthetically pleasing like the Lumaran light sailors, nor brutally functional like the Jethar dreadnoughts. They were often asymmetrical, utilitarian, and bristling with instruments the consortium's finest minds could not decipher. And then there was the Vindicator. It was unlike the other human ships. It was never seen in a fleet. It was always alone. Its hull was a matte black, absorbing all sensor scans, reflecting nothing. Its silhouette was a jagged, predatory thing, an affront to the elegant geometries of advanced starship design. It had first appeared at the edge of the Zargothian expanse, a region of space the consortium had declared off-limits due to unstable temporal anomalies. The Zargothians, a proud and aggressive insectoid race, had dispatched a punitive fleet to intercept and destroy the intruder. The fleet never returned. There was no wreckage, no distress sea. Now, no lingering radiation. There was only the Vindicator, holding its position for a single solar cycle before vanishing as silently as it had arrived. The Lumaran delegate pulsed again, its light softening with a somber hue. We have tried to understand their psychology. We have monitored their public data streams, their art, their philosophies. It is a storm of contradictions. They cherish the individual, yet they will sacrifice billions for a principle. They speak of love and compassion, yet their history is the most violent we have ever catalogued. They create art of breathtaking beauty and then turn their gaze to the stars with a cold, analytical ambition that is unsettling. We assumed their military doctrine would be as transparent, as chaotic. We were wrong. Their fleet movements, when they occur, are precise, logical, and ruthlessly efficient. They do not posture. They do not make empty threats. When their fleets move, worlds change. The Jethar Prime snorted, a deep, percussive sound. They are children playing with forces they do not understand. This Vindicator is a singular anomaly, a stolen relic, perhaps, or a unique prototype that cannot be replicated. We should not allow the fear of one ghost ship to paralyze us. The consolidated systems represents the combined might of countless starfaring civilizations. We could extinguish their sun if we so chose. A demonstration of our power is what is required. A clear, undeniable message. A message? The Cathar's sibilant voice was laced with something akin to amusement. And what message would that be, Jethar Prime? That we, the enlightened elder races, are so terrified of a single, silent ship that we would resort to the brute force of stellar extinction. That we would murder a nascent civilization because we cannot comprehend their ingenuity. Such an act would not be a demonstration of power. It would be an admission of fear. An act of barbarism that would unravel the very fabric of this consortium. No, we must understand them. We must understand the Vindicator. What is its purpose? What is it protecting? Or what is it hunting? The chamber fell silent again, the weight of that question settling upon them all. The nebulae outside continued their slow, cosmic ballet, indifferent to the anxieties of the beings who watched them. For generations, the consortium had been the apex of galactic civilization. Their power was absolute, their peace maintained through a delicate balance of ancient treaties and overwhelming technological superiority. Now, that peace felt fragile. That superiority was in question. All because of a single, silent warship from a species of loud, emotional, unpredictable apes who had only just learned to walk among the stars. The fear was not of human conquest, not in the traditional sense. It was the fear of the unknown, the terror of a paradigm shifting beneath their feet. The humans were not playing the same game. They were playing something new, something the elder races did not have the rules for. And the Vindicator was the piece on the board they could not predict, the silent harbinger of a change they could not control. It was the physical embodiment of their failure to categorize, to dominate, to understand. And that, more than any weapon, was what the superpowers of the galaxy truly feared. The decision was made, not through consensus, but through the exhaustion of all other options. They would send a delegation, not a fleet, not a task force, but a single, unarmed diplomatic vessel. It would be crewed by representatives from the three most influential races, the Lumaran, the Jethar, and the Cathar. They would proceed to the Sol system, the human homeworld, and they would request an audience. They would not demand. They would not threaten. They would ask. It was a humbling prospect, a political maneuver that bordered on supplication, and it sent a tremor of disquiet through the ancient halls of the Citadel. The Jethar Prime argued vehemently against it, calling it a display of weakness. But the Lumaran and the Cathar, in a rare moment of agreement, saw it as the only logical path forward. To fight an enemy you do not understand is to invite annihilation. First, they had to understand. They had to look into the eyes of the creators of the Vindicator and see what manner of beings they truly were. The diplomatic vessel, the stellar harmony, was a thing of beauty and tradition. A Lumaran creation, its hull was woven from solidified light, its internal chambers configured to accommodate a dozen different alien physiologies in perfect comfort. It moved through the void not by tearing it open, but by persuading it to part, a gentle and elegant form of travel that was as much art as it was science. On board, the atmosphere was thick with a tension that belied the ship's name. High Delegate Valerius, the Lumaran emissary, spent its time in deep meditation, its crystalline form glowing with a soft, steady light as it essayed endless streams of data on human culture, trying to find a pattern, a key to unlock their psyche. Jethar War Marshal Korg, a veteran of conflicts that had ended before the humans had discovered bronze, sat in his gravity-plated chamber, his massive form still, his mind replaying the scant sensor data of the Zargothian fleet's disappearance, searching for a flaw, a weakness, a tactical reality he could grasp. And in the darkest part of the ship, the Cathar Inquisitor, known only as Xylos, communed with shadows, its thoughts a silent, intricate web of possibilities and contingencies. Their journey was long, not because of the distance, but because of the caution they employed. They navigated ancient, forgotten hyperlanes, avoiding the well-traveled routes where the Vindicator had been sighted. Each subspace transition was preceded by exhaustive sensor sweeps, each emergence followed by a period of silent running. They were a diplomatic mission, but they moved with the stealth of spies, a testament to the fear the human vessel had instilled in them. As they approached the Sol system, the tension reached its zenith. This was the heart of the human enigma, the cradle of this paradoxical species. Their first surprise was the system's defenses. They were absent. The consortium's intelligence had predicted a heavily fortified star system, a web of orbital platforms, minefields, and patrol fleets. Instead, they found nothing. The system was open, almost welcoming. There were commercial vessels moving between the planets, civilian stations in orbit, a constant, bustling stream of traffic that spoke of a society at ease, not one on a war footing. It was disorienting. Where was the paranoia of a young species venturing into a hostile galaxy? Where were the weapons born of their violent history? They sent a standard diplomatic hail as they crossed the orbital path of the system's fifth planet, a colossal gas giant. The response was almost instantaneous. It was not a coded military signal or a guarded political query. It was plain, unencrypted text in Galactic standard, followed by a stream of visual and auditory art. A welcome, an invitation. It was so simple, so devoid of artifice, that it felt like a trap. Korg, the Jethar War Marshal, grumbled that it was a classic misdirection, a feigned weakness to lure them into a kill zone. Xylos, the Cathar Inquisitor, suggested it was a test of their own intentions, a psychological gambit. Valerius, the Lumaran, simply found it beautiful. The art was complex, emotional, full of a yearning and a sorrow and a joy that was utterly alien, yet deeply resonant. They were directed to a station in orbit around the third planet, a world of swirling white clouds and deep blue oceans. The station was vast, a rotating ring of green parks, gleaming towers, and transparent domes. It was not a military fortress, it was a city in space. As the stellar harmony approached, a small, unarmed vessel detached from the station and moved to escort them. It was a human ship, its design clean and functional. On their main viewer, an image appeared, a human. The being was unimpressive. A bipedal primate, soft-skinned, with a face that was a canvas of subtle, shifting muscles. It was an old male of its species, his hair the color of silver, his eyes a pale blue that seemed to hold a deep and weary calm. He was dressed in simple, dark blue robes, unadorned with any symbols of rank or power. He introduced himself simply as Ambassador Kai. "Welcome to Sol, delegates of the Consolidated Systems." His voice was a calm, low baritone, the Galactic standard perfectly articulated. "We have been expecting you. We hope your journey was pleasant. Please dock at your leisure. We have prepared accommodations and look forward to opening a dialogue." The lack of ceremony was the second surprise. There were no honor guards, no grand pronouncements, no displays of military might. Kai's demeanor was that of a gracious host welcoming guests into his home. It was utterly disarming. Korg was convinced it was an elaborate ruse. Xylos was intrigued, its mind racing to analyze the layers of this unexpected strategy. Valerius felt a sense of relief, a glimmer of hope that they had not journeyed all this way simply to be met with the same paranoia that gripped the consortium. They docked, they disembarked. The station's environment was a perfect replication of their respective homeworlds. The light, the gravity, the atmospheric composition. The attention to detail was astonishing. Humans in simple uniforms greeted them with quiet nods of respect, guiding them through corridors that were more like art galleries than hallways, filled with sculptures and paintings depicting scenes from 1,000 different alien worlds. It was a celebration of galactic diversity, a thing the consortium preached but rarely practiced with such genuine reverence. They were led to a large, circular chamber. One wall was a vast window look-in. Out at the blue and white marble of the planet below. In the center of the room was a simple, round table. Ambassador Kai was waiting for them, standing alone. There were no guards, no aides, no entourage. "Please," he said with a gesture towards the table, "make yourselves comfortable." The three delegates took their places. The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of the station's life support. Korg, impatient with the lack of formality, broke it. His voice was a low growl. "We have come to discuss a matter of grave importance. A vessel of your creation, the one you call Vindicator." Kai met the Gethar's glare without flinching. His expression was patient, almost sad. "I understand. Its presence has caused a considerable amount of concern among the members of the consolidated systems." "Concern is an understatement," Korg rumbled. "It has violated sovereign territory. It has been implicated in the disappearance of a Zargothian fleet. It operates outside all known laws of physics and galactic treaties. It is an act of aggression. We demand an explanation." The human ambassador steepled his fingers, his gaze calm and steady. "It is not a warship, War Marshal." The statement was so simple, so direct, that it stunned them into silence. Korg let out a short, harsh laugh. "Not a warship. We have seen its profile. We have analyzed its potential energy output. It is the most powerful weapon we have ever encountered." "Power and purpose are two different things," Kai replied softly. His gaze shifted to Valerius, the Lumaran. "High Delegate, your people understand the spectrum. You know that the same light that can illuminate a city can also be focused into a lance that can pierce a planet's crust. The tool is defined by its application." Valerius pulsed with a soft, inquisitive light. "Then what is its application, Ambassador? What is its purpose?" Kai paused, his gaze drifting to the planet hanging in the void outside the window. A look of profound melancholy crossed his features. "To understand the purpose of the Vindicator, you must first understand something about us. You have studied our history, I am certain. You have seen our violence, our endless cycles of conflict and destruction. You see us as a young, aggressive, and unpredictable species. And you are not wrong. That is a part of who we are. It is a part we are not proud of, but one we cannot deny." He leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly, drawing them in. "We have a concept, a ghost that has haunted us since we first learned to reason. We call it the Great Filter. It is the idea that at some point between the emergence of life and the development of a galaxy-spanning civilization, there is a barrier, a challenge so profound that most, if not all, intelligent species fail to overcome it. For a long time, we believed that filter was our own nature, our capacity for self-destruction. We have come close to annihilating ourselves, countless times over trivial matters of territory, ideology, and pride." He looked at each of them in turn, his pale blue eyes seeming to pierce their very being. "We survived. We clawed our way out of our cradle, scarred and humbled. We came to the stars with a deep and abiding fear, not of other species, but of ourselves. We knew that our history, our instincts, could make us a plague upon this galaxy, so we made a choice. We instituted a principle that has guided us ever since. A prime directive, if you will, but not for others, for ourselves. A law of non-interference that was absolute, but with a single, terrible exception." Xylos, the Cathar, finally spoke, its voice a dry whisper from the shadows. "The exception." Kai nodded slowly. "The exception. We recognized that there might be others out there like us, or worse, species who did not overcome their self-destructive tendencies, but instead embraced them. Species who saw the galaxy not as a place of wonder and discovery, but as a resource to be consumed, a canvas for their domination. Species who would become filters for others." He took a deep breath, the sound unnervingly loud in the quiet room. "The Vindicator is not a warship. It is a conscience. It is a quarantine. It is the physical manifestation of a promise we made to ourselves and to a universe we had not yet met. Its purpose is not to conquer. Its purpose is to watch." Korg's massive form tensed. Watch, the Zargothian fleet was not watched, it vanished. The Zargothians were preparing to deploy a biological weapon against a presentient species on a developing world in the expanse, Kai stated, his voice devoid of emotion, a simple recitation of fact. A plague that would have not only sterilized the planet, but would have been contagious and adaptable, potentially spreading through the entire sector. The Zargothian Empire saw it as a simple, efficient way to clear a region for colonization. An act of casual genocide. The delegates were stunned. This was not information the consortium had. The Zargothians had reported a simple patrol action. The Vindicator did not destroy the fleet, Kai continued, his voice heavy with a weariness that seemed older than his species. It simply removed them. The ships, the crews, the weapon. They were transported to a pocket dimension, a fold in spacetime where they can do no harm. They are alive, they are unharmed. They are simply isolated. It was not an act of war. It was an act of sanitation. The chamber was utterly silent. The scale of the revelation was staggering. The technology to transport an entire fleet to another dimension, instantaneously and without a trace, it was beyond anything the consortium could conceive. It was the work of gods, not of a young, primitive species. But how, Valerius chimed, its light flickering with awe and disbelief. Such technology, it would require a mastery of spacetime that is theoretical at best. Kai gave a small, sad smile. We are a species of extremes, high delegate. Our capacity for destruction is matched only by our capacity for remorse. After our last global conflict, we dedicated ourselves to understanding the very fabric of existence, not to weaponize it, but to ensure we could never again threaten the integrity of our own reality. We learned to listen to the universe. We found that spacetime is not a smooth, featureless plane. It has currents, eddies, and depths. We did not invent a new technology. We simply learned to navigate the one that has always been there. He gestured to the planet outside. That is our true strength. Not our weapons, not our ships. It is our humility, a humility born of near extinction. We know what it is to stand at the edge of the abyss, and we have sworn that we will never allow another to push a world into it, not while we have the strength to prevent it. The Vindicator, the ghost that had haunted them, was not a predator. It was a shepherd with the power to move mountains, to calm storms, to isolate wolves. The humans were not arrogant newcomers. They were galactic custodians, self-appointed and silent, driven by the scars of their own past. They did not seek to rule. They sought only to protect the balance, a balance the elder races in their complacency had begun to take for granted. And what of us, Xylos whispered from the shadows, have we been judged? Kai's gaze was soft. You have been observed. The consortium is an ancient and venerable institution. It is stagnant, perhaps, arrogant at times, but it is not malicious. It is a force for stability. The Vindicator has never acted against a consortium world. It has only ever appeared in ungoverned spaces, at the fringes, where the laws of civilization give way to the appetites of the predatory. The revelation settled over them, a profound and world-altering truth. They had come expecting to confront a barbarian, a rogue state brandishing a powerful new weapon. Instead, they had found a philosopher king, a race of penitent giants who had quietly taken up a burden the rest of the galaxy had not even recognized existed. Their fear of humanity had been utterly misplaced. They had been afraid of human aggression, of their chaotic nature. But they should have been in awe of their restraint. The power to remove entire fleets from existence, wielded not for conquest, but for the quiet, thankless task of preventing the worst impulses of sentient life from running rampant. Korg, the Gethar war marshal, who had come ready for a confrontation, for a battle of wills, felt the foundation of his reality crumble. He had spent his long life in the study of war, of strategy, of power. He understood force and the application of force. But this was something else entirely. It was power wielded as a scalpel, not a hammer. It was a philosophy of strength so profound that it made the consortium's grand fleets and mighty dreadnoughts seem like the angry toys of children. He lowered his massive head in a gesture of respect so deep and ancient that his own people had not used it for centuries. Valerius, the Lumaran, pulsed with a brilliant, warm light. It saw not a threat, but a kindred spirit. The Lumaran had always believed in a universal harmony, a cosmic balance. The humans, in their own violent, roundabout way, had arrived at the same conclusion. They had simply taken it upon themselves to be the enforcers of that harmony. It was an act of supreme arrogance, but also of supreme responsibility. And Xylos, the Cathar, ever the strategist, saw the dawn of a new galactic era. The humans were not a rival to be defeated or a subject to be ruled. They were a new, fundamental force in the galaxy, a stabilizing element, an ally, perhaps. An ally whose true power was not in a single ship, but in the moral and philosophical conviction that had created it. The dialogue continued for days. The humans shared everything. They explained the principles of their dimensional science, not the mechanics, which they said were are too dangerous to share, but the philosophy behind it. They showed the consortium delegates the archives of the Vindicator's missions. They saw it divert asteroid strikes from unsuspecting primitive worlds. They saw it neutralize a supernova-inducing weapon built by a nihilistic cult in the galactic halo. They saw it contain a nanite plague that was consuming entire star systems at the edge of the void. Mission after mission, a litany of averted catastrophes, all carried out in absolute silence, with no expectation of reward or recognition. The humans did not see themselves as saviors. They saw themselves as janitors, cleaning up the messes that others made, preventing the fires that others were all too willing to start. The Vindicator was feared because it was silent, because it was unknown. But its true power was that it was a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, their capacity for empathy, an empathy forged in the fires of their own self-inflicted hell. They knew the darkness better than anyone, and so they, more than anyone, cherished the light. An understanding was reached. It was not a treaty, not a formal alliance, but something deeper, a recognition. The consortium delegates would return to the Citadel and they would tell the truth. They would explain that the humans were not a threat to be contained, but a mystery to be embraced. That the silent ship that haunted their space was not a harbinger of war, but a guardian of peace. The balance of power in the galaxy had not just shifted, it had been redefined. As the stellar harmony prepared for its departure, Ambassador Kai stood with the 3 delegates in the observation deck. The great ship of solidified light glowed softly against the backdrop of stars. A sense of profound peace had settled between them, the quiet camaraderie of beings who had stared into a great truth together. "There is one last thing you should know," Kai said, his voice quiet. "The reason we chose this path, the reason we built the Vindicator." He turned to a console, and with a few keystrokes, the starfield on the main screen changed. The familiar spiral of their galaxy receded, shrinking until it was just one of countless points of light in a vast, cosmic web. Then, the image zoomed in, not on their galaxy, but on the immense, dark spaces between them. The intergalactic void. Our deep space observatories, the ones that listen to the silence between the stars, detected something a century ago, Kai explained. It is very old, and it is very faint. A signal buried in the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is not a natural phenomenon. It is structured. It is a message, or rather, a warning. On the screen, a waveform appeared, a complex pattern of repeating signals. Beneath it, a translation algorithm scrolled, struggling to find meaning in the ancient data. A few fragments were rendered in Galactic Standard, the words stark and chilling. "Silence the noise. They are coming. The bridge is dark. Do not awaken the sleepers." Kai's expression was grim. "We do not know who sent it. We do not know who they are. The signal emanates from the Boötes void, a region of space so empty we once thought it a statistical impossibility. We believe it is a remnant, a final broadcast from a civilization that faced a threat of unimaginable scale. A threat that could cross the void between galaxies." He looked at the delegates, his eyes filled with a gravity that made all their previous fears seem petty and small. "We realize that the squabbles between empires, the petty wars over territory and resources, they are the noise. The meaningless chatter of a nursery, unaware of the wolves outside the door. If such a threat exists, the galaxy cannot be divided. It cannot be consumed by its own internal conflicts. It must be prepared. It must be mature." The truth of the Vindicator was revealed in its final, terrifying context. It was not just a quarantine for galactic threats, it was a tool to enforce a galactic peace, to silence the noise, to stop the children from fighting amongst themselves because a far greater darkness was coming for them all. The humans had taken it upon themselves not just to police their corner of the universe, but to prepare the entire galaxy for a war they weren't even sure was real, against an enemy they had never seen. It was an act of staggering presumption and even more staggering foresight. "The Vindicator is a stopgap," Kai concluded, his voice a near whisper. "A way to maintain stability, to give us all time, Time to grow, to unite, to become something more than a collection of squabbling tribes. Because we believe this great filter we once feared, it is not behind us. It is still ahead, and it is coming from the dark. The stellar harmony departed the Sol system, not with the trepidation with which it had arrived, but with a new, far heavier burden. The fear of a single human warship was gone, replaced by the terrifying awe of humanity's true purpose, and beyond that, the cold, existential dread of an ancient warning from the void. They had sought to understand a potential rival and had instead found a silent, watchful protector. A protector who was desperately trying to prepare its unsuspecting charges for the coming night. The galaxy was so much larger, so much older, and so much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And the paradoxical, primitive, emotional humans, the scarred and penitent apes from a small blue world, were the only ones who seemed to understand what was truly at stake. The silence of the Vindicator was not the silence of a predator waiting to strike. It was the silence of a watchman on the wall of the universe, staring into an endless dark, waiting for an enemy that even superpowers had never learned to fear.